But reality is, and we've seen this quite a lot, when people put their price up, actually velocity increases. They sell more.
Welcome back to another episode of Selling Strategies. We are remote, as you can tell, for this session. And this episode is going to be for Amazon sellers because we're talking specifically about Amazon FBA. And with me today is Jim Mann. So Jim Mann is VP of Europe at Getida. Jim, do you just want to give the elevator pitch, if you like, in terms of what Getida does in your role at the company?
Yeah, of course. Hi, Kieran. So my background is I was actually a seller myself on Amazon from 2013 to 2020. I was nudging 8 figures. Unfortunately, I was in the travel category, so that very quickly put an end to my business when COVID came along. That led me to Thrasio. So I was head of M&A and first hire in Europe for Thrasio. We bought upwards of 200 brands as a company, which meant I looked at a lot of Amazon brands, and I probably learned a lot around the success factors around Amazon as a platform and some of the key metrics, which we can talk about. And now I'm with Getida. So Getida, we help Amazon sellers reconcile where Amazon makes some mistakes. So FBA is an incredible ecosystem, but they do make mistakes. They lose, they damage, they don't receive some units. Sometimes when you ship 1,000 units, they might lose 100. We pull about $25 billion a day in transactional value through our API. We audit about 10% of our FBA revenue, and we help sellers reconcile those numbers, present the case to Amazon. And when Amazon refunds the money, it goes directly back to the seller. And we get about 1 to 3% of annual revenue back for FBA sellers. So it's significant cash flow.
If you're an Amazon seller, you're more than likely going to be using Amazon FBA. I think the figures are like 73% of people in the US, Amazon sellers are using FBA. So I suppose my first question is that the right play?
The compelling thing with Amazon is the number of customers they have in that ecosystem. So if you're not leveraging Amazon as a sales channel, you're leaving a huge amount of sales and revenue opportunity on the table. That's a fact. The other thing about FBA that's nice for growing businesses is that FBA as a system allows you to grow and scale without. So for example, if year 1, you're doing 500,000, year 2, you're doing 3 million, year 4, you're doing 10 million. If you were running your own fulfillment, you would be having to worry about building and scaling and rehiring warehouses and all that kind of stuff. The beauty of FBA is it takes all of that headache away. You ship it into them, they'll take as much or as little inventory as you need in there. So it's a very scalable business, but also it can come down with you as well. So if you want to slow things down, you're not left with excess space and therefore fixed costs of a warehouse. And that for a lot of businesses which have to focus on many areas of expertise, it removes one of the biggest headaches, which is actually fulfillment.
Do you find that as businesses grow in your experience, and with Getida, that maybe smaller businesses start off with Amazon FBA, but then they transition and kind of bring this capability in-house after a certain period?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on the type of product. So Amazon are getting stricter on their fees. And what you can see is that they incentivize smaller, lighter products. So there's 2 things about FBA. They do not want to be a warehouse for storage. They want to be a fulfillment center. So if you have SKUs that sit there too long, you will pay long-term storage fees. So you have to be very well optimized, ideally with like 90 to 120 days inventory. And if you have too little, they'll start to charge you lack of inventory fees because they want to drive a great customer experience and keep fulfilling product. And equally, if you have too much inventory now, they will start to charge you for having excess units in storage. So that's something that people need to be mindful of.
So let's just kind of swing around to a couple of key challenges that retailers are facing at the moment, which is high shipping costs on the one hand, and then just the complexity of accessing international markets. So how does Amazon FBA facilitate both of those challenges?
Let's take Europe and US. So I mean, US is obviously it's one market, and so you can ship into one warehouse, and Amazon will distribute your products across the States for an optimized prime delivery. So if you were to do that yourself, you would end up having to have 3PLs in East, West, and probably Central minimum, in order to drive shipping times that most customers expect these days. Everyone's used to having stuff within a couple of hours to a couple of days, worst case scenario. In Europe, it gets more complicated, especially since Brexit. So Unfortunately, with the UK, you have to treat the UK as a single market now, and you ship in directly to UK. In Europe, you can still benefit from Pan-European FBA. So Pan-European FBA is a program where you can ship into Germany, and providing you have live listings in 5 marketplaces, they will redistribute your inventory across Europe for you based on what their algorithm predicts to be the demand for your product. That is a huge relief for most brands. It's very hard to plan how much is going to be sold in each market and then to split shipments accordingly. So that removes a huge headache. So Pan-European FBA is an amazing product that they offer for sellers, and it allows marketplace expansion to be a lot less risky and easier for most brands.
And then what about UK sellers accessing the US market?
Yeah, it's relatively easy. You have to deal with the usual stuff. You have to look at the import duties. Trump a few years ago created, if you're shipping from China, really hammered people with 25% Trump tax. But shipping into the US is actually pretty straightforward. Compared to Europe, the US is very easy in that sense.
Amazon FBA, it's a nearly perfect machine, but it's not perfect, and there are reimbursement issues that most Amazon sellers are experiencing. So can you just walk listeners through what those issues are exactly? Let's just kind of dig into the detail a bit more.
Amazon, I think I read recently, they shift 7,500 units per minute in the US, I think it was. So it's the whole, the FBA system is incredible, but obviously like any near perfect engine, there's going to have the odd failure rate. So that's where we work. We audit every transaction for sellers, and we find where there's that 1% to 3% failure rate. Typically, so what happens is you'll ship to the FBA warehouse, and at that point, you're entering the FBA ecosystem. As soon as a SKU goes into the ecosystem, our platform is monitoring every movement of that SKU. So typical issues: you ship 1,000 units in, Amazon says they've received 900, discrepancy of 100 units. We investigate, or they receive 1,000, and then their algorithm goes, right, those 1,000 units, we're going to put some in LA, some in New York, some in Texas, and they distribute based on predicted demand that the algorithm tells them. So as they split that 1,000 unit shipment, they then redistribute. These are potential failure points because, again, they're going into pallets, they're getting moved to warehouses, they get lost, they get damaged, and we find all of these discrepancies. We reconcile them using the data that we can pull from Amazon, and then we present the case to Amazon to get the money back. And actually, Amazon's incredibly fair because I don't know if you know this, but when they reimburse a seller for a unit, they give them as if it was a full price sale, less FBA fees. So they don't give you COGS. They give you as if it were a full price sale, less FBA fees. It's actually very profitable because most sellers these days are spending PPC money. This is almost the most profitable SKU sale you'll make because there's no advertising cost. It's a pure FBA, it's pure retail income, less FBA fees.
It's an additional revenue stream.
100%. If, for example, if they lose a pallet with 1,000 units and they reconcile, they agree that they've lost 1,000 units. It's like selling 1,000 units in one transaction in a day. It's 1,000 units of profitable sales. You might have some headaches now because you shifted too much inventory too quickly, but you'll have a nice cash flow surge when it comes into your account.
Okay, so let's say I'm an Amazon seller, I'm on FBA, and we internally have identified many of these issues as just like a kind of starting point. What now? What are my options? Is this something that explore internally and kind of figure out?
Yeah, I would encourage everyone to understand the process themselves. It's your business. The more you can understand about every part of the business, the better. We work with brands often where the team has been doing it themselves. Dealing with Seller Central can be very frustrating no matter what you're talking to them about, and anyone who deals with Amazon will agree with that. I think the key thing that makes people decide to hand this over to an expert, and my observation is that teams doing it themselves have a success rate on cases they file of around 30 to 50%. We have a success rate of 90 to 92% on average. So even after paying us our fees, and we only charge a percentage of what we recover. If we don't, it's a no-win, no-fee model. So if we don't recover fees for you, we don't get paid on the cases we're not successful on. So if you take a 90% success rate against a 50% success rate, even when you're paying us 20, 25%, it still actually nets more cash in the business. And the team that were distracted doing this are now free to go and do other revenue generating activities. So there's a double effect of more net cash in the business, even after paying a service fee, and more resources in the business go off and work on other stuff. And honestly, if you had someone doing reimbursements all day for a living in a business, they'd probably hand in the notice within 6 months. It's a horrible job. It's not one that anyone gets out of bed in the morning and looks forward to doing.
Any customer stories you can share on this?
I met someone a few weeks ago, but we ran an audit on their account, and they're about a $40 million seller. And he's about to sell the business, and he had been actually using another service provider, but that's kind of irrelevant. We audited the account and we found $1.3 million in reimbursement opportunity, which is obviously huge. It's like 1.5% of his annual revenue plus. But the thing that's really significant for him is that he's about to sell the business, and he's selling that business at a multiple of EBITDA. If we get that 1.3 million back into the business in cash flow, he can put that in as EBITDA in the business in the trailing 12 months. And selling the business at 3x minimum, in reality, I wrote it down earlier, it's like $3.9 million of value at exit in his pocket just from doing reimbursements. That was pretty mind-blowing. And then the other one, which is very common, is if you're getting 1 to 3% of your revenue back in reimbursements, that's meaningful cash flow. But the really good operators are taking that cash flow, they're reinvesting it into PPC. And most advertising teams should be aiming for at least a 3x return on ad spend. So if you take 1% extra cash flow, multiply it by 3, you've got 3% top line growth with no additional investment in the business. If you can get 3% of your annual revenue back and 3x it, that's 9% top line growth with no additional cash flow. And without having to hire people or anything, because it's being done, the cash is being generated by Gatida, and the PPC team are already there working. I'd say to everyone, you won't find another way to drive 9% like top line growth at the moment with relatively little investment in terms of people time. It's a no-brainer.
Okay, so moving on, I just want to talk a little bit about price, because price, very sensitive issue at the moment. We've had a couple of years of inflation, like cost of living crisis. Consumers want quality at affordable prices. They also want free shipping. They want free returns. So, the idea that Amazon sellers might increase their prices there's hesitancy around that. But should they be changing their mindset?
Yes and no. Price is a really scary thing. And so without doubt on any marketplace, but on Amazon, competition is fierce. And we as human beings, one of the biggest limiting things for us all is our belief systems. We tell us things are possible, we tell us things are not possible. And price is massively driven by many brand owners by their limiting beliefs. And they see the average price of similar products, and they think that if they go higher, they're going to lose sales velocity, they're going to lose conversion, and all of these things are very important on Amazon in terms of how the algorithm ranks your product. But reality is, and we've seen this quite a lot, when people put their price up, actually velocity increases. They sell more. They make more money and they sell more. Why? I encourage everyone to watch how they buy on Amazon. I do this the whole time. I see products that look really similar. I look at the reviews and I go, $1 to $2 extra. There's probably something to it. And you tell yourself you're going to get more value if you pay more. It could be absolute rubbish. So putting the price up is scary for everyone. So I'd encourage always to use tools because it takes the emotion out of it. And they'll push. And good Amazon specific tools will also monitor conversion rates and sales velocity. And so it will find that sweet spot where you can push your price for maximum contribution margin per unit without compromising sales velocity and keyword ranking, which is obviously critical on the platform. So price is massive. And it's an immediate driver for profit. Many other things you have to wait. You can work on COGS and upstream and supply chain. You can work on packaging. We can talk about that in a minute. But the one thing that has an immediate impact on margin is price. It's like you change it now, you see the impact tomorrow.
Let's just touch on some of those other things, because obviously, when we're talking about price increases, we're talking about finding ways to increase those margins. So what are some of those other channels? Yes, price is the immediate one, but there are other options, I guess.
Yeah, if we're going to keep it Amazon specific, I think for big brands coming onto Amazon, or even existing people who are starting on Amazon as a channel, what a lot of people focus on is, and it's a natural thing to do, is to focus on the cost of goods, the manufacturing costs. But actually, one of the biggest opportunities for Amazon professional sellers is to look at packaging and size tiers. So, for example, if you're in a supermarket or retail optimized packaging is big. It takes up retail space, right? It says, look at me, because you want people to pick it off the shelf. On Amazon, that's irrelevant because the product's in a box. You don't see it until it arrives at home. What's important on Amazon is your listing, which is a different conversation. So really geek out on size tiers. If there's a way to redesign a product in a way that no one else has currently thought of doing that brings you down a size tier, you could be saving $2 per unit. And as a percentage of profit, that is huge. You know, at Fascio, for example, we bought a brand that had these amazing mops, and a mop's a nightmare thing for shipping. It's a long stick. And we worked with the factory to redesign it, to break it into 3 pieces. And it brought down the FBA fees by $5 per unit on a $45 product. Transformed the metrics on that business. And so when we were looking to buy brands, we were always looking at opportunities like that, because we knew that we could just within a couple of months have a completely different unit economic profile, which would drive huge amounts of profit in SKUs or brands. So look at packaging and really focus on size tiers for Amazon is a huge thing that a lot of people are beginning to do, but there's still an opportunity to get ahead of the pack doing that.
I want to get into the weeds a little bit about, specific tactics that Amazon sellers can use to increase their sales, their visibility, their conversion rate on site.
Yeah, I think again, a lot of this stuff's really common sense. It's not always common practice. So if you think how you shop on Amazon, you put in a search term, and then Amazon gives you a whole list of main images. At which point you're going to click through on those. Okay, so the click-through rate on those, you can have an amazing listing, but if your main image does not draw people to click through, it doesn't matter. It's behind a hidden door. So obsess about click-through rate on that main image, because that's the number one driver that takes you to the listing. And then the listing, of course, has to be optimized. So again, watch how if you're spending £500 on a product, it's different to a £20 to £30 or £15 product. Most of us often are buying £15, £20 products. You click on the main image, click-through rate, and then you get through and you then look at the images. Again, most people are very visual. They shop visually. They look at the images, they look at the reviews, and they may read some of the copy on the listing. So really optimize your images to talk to the keywords that are important to the audience you're trying to convert on. That's it. If the price is around the right place and you have a base of reviews and you've got people onto your listing and the images are good, you've got a very good chance of converting, driving sales velocity. High conversion, high sales velocity is what drives keyword ranking. And also, if you convert very highly on certain keywords, when you're bidding on PPC, the algorithm will often give you better bid pricing because they see you as very relevant to those search terms. So there's a few things that all tie up together that are really important, but the click-through rate on that main image is everything. Because if people don't click on that, no one's ever going to see the rest of the beautiful stuff you do behind that door.
And like you say, it's the basics, but it's implementing those basics for sure.
Yeah, a lot of people know this, but they don't. It's common sense and common practice. A lot of people know this, they don't actually execute. It's like everything in life, it's like turning that knowledge into actually execution is the key.
What about multi-channel sellers? So obviously, we're talking about specifically Amazon sellers, but a lot of Limworks customers, for example, Amazon is just one of their channels. So strategically, their operational setup is a little bit different. Do you have any specific advice for these guys compared to just like exclusive Amazon sellers?
Depends on the size of the business and the revenue. But if you've reached a certain size, Amazon without doubt has professionalized massively in the last 5 years, maybe more. And so what you see, and I support this, is that brands are using agencies who are specialist channel managers. And there are some channel managers now are doing Amazon and Walmart, but their core normally is Amazon. So if you have a brand that's doing well and is an omni-channel brand and you want to succeed on Amazon, I would encourage working with a specialist agency. And if your business doesn't warrant that or your business strategy doesn't align to that, make sure that your team or you hire people who are Amazon specialists, because I see it all the time. E-commerce specialists come onto Amazon and it's not e-commerce, it's Amazon. And the way the algorithm works and everything is a whole new knowledge base that you need to have in-house, or you need to give it to someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as SEO as a discipline. It requires specialized in-house capability. And like you say, Amazon's reached that same point now.
I mean, the opportunity on Amazon is fantastic. It's become very competitive. It's become absolutely, it's professionalized. And so if you want to go on and win, you have to be in that sort of 0.05% of operators. And if you don't have that in-house, then start off at least by getting some support from an agency.
Last question then, Jim. So anyone getting started on Amazon FBA, any advice for them?
I'm still a fan of buying a course. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, but there are some guys who do very good step-by-step and everything from product selection, creating a listing, how the algorithm works, PPC structures, Amazon SEO specifically. And so there are a million people who sort of profess to be gurus. Most of them are full of it and don't actually know what they're talking about. They're just selling courses. But there are one or two people out there who do it themselves and have very good content that stays current, because the algorithms is changing the whole time. And in fact, the algorithm's now changing a lot because they're using AI and they're delivering customized search results based on customer behavior, which is a whole new bit of the algorithm people are trying to observe and understand. And you need to stay close to those nuances to keep evolving and being successful. So yeah, follow one or two people only, shut off the noise of all the other people and just stick to one method, and then you'll have a good chance of success.
Jim, man, appreciate you jumping on today. And I hope everyone watching got plenty of value out of that.
Thanks, Kieran. Absolute pleasure.